knows about things like YouTube and stuff like that has tried to put last week's service on YouTube, but because we're new to them, they don't trust us, I guess, entirely, or the content we might be putting on. So they're only allowing 10 minutes at a shot, and she told me, I think by way of a hint, but she was teasing, that the sermon fit last week. It was only 10 minutes. Sorry. We'll have a couple of bites at it this week, I'm afraid. There are things that need to be said, including a welcome to Reverend McCleary's daughter, Margaret. It's wonderful to have you with us. We welcomed and made mention of some of the ancestors in our faith and some of the leaders in our past last week, and I won't redo that, but do know how very grateful this congregation is to all that has been done by the giants who have gone before us. It had been a long day. They had fed 5,000 men, plus women, plus children, and all they had was a lad's lunch and the blessing of Jesus on that lunch. Now Jesus, not surprisingly, seeks some solitude. He sends the disciples ahead to Bethsaida in the boat. He dismisses the crowd. And then he heads up into the mountain to pray. For some of the disciples, this boat thing is familiar territory. Before Jesus had tapped them on the heart, some of them had been fishermen. So the water and the boat are their second home, and for the most part, the wind has been their friend, that which caught their sails and helped them reach their destination. However, sometime during the darkest, longest part of the night, the wind turns on them. Bereft of Jesus' companionship, they struggle and strain, using their considerable experience with the waters and sailing, and yet they get nowhere. And where is Jesus? Where is Jesus when they need him the most? Mark tells us that he made them get into the boat. And after saying farewell to them, he went up on the mountain to pray. Surely they are wondering if they will capsize and die. Surely they are wondering if Jesus cares about their plight, why their old friends, the wind and the water, have all turned on them, why their friend who has called them to give up everything and follow him has now clearly abandoned them. But wait. Mark tells us that even though Jesus longs for time alone to pray, from his vantage point on the mountain, he sees that they are in trouble. As dawn begins to break, he comes to them walking on the water. You know, sometimes when we read scripture, we go by it fairly quickly, and we don't get what that might have felt like. But wait for a moment. Just before dawn, a little bit of mist, a little bit of fog, chilly air, exhausted from straining at the oars, and you see what appears to be an apparition coming across the waters. They think they're seeing a ghost, and who could blame them? They're exhausted and frightened for their lives. They had seen Jesus head off in the opposite direction earlier, and who, in fact, has ever seen someone walking on water? It may look like Jesus, but how can it possibly be him? It seems, according to Mark, that he intends to pass by, but when they cry out in terror, he speaks reassurance to them, urging them to take heart. Take heart. Don't be afraid. And then he gets into the boat with them. Utterly astounded, barely begins to cover everything they must have felt. Metaphorically, figuratively, personally, we've all been there, haven't we? straining against the winds and the waters, straining at the oars, battling against all odds, feeling alone and abandoned, wondering if we'll survive. In our own life's journey, most of us have, at one time or another, wondered. The disciples needed to be reminded that Jesus was with them whenever they were battling the strong winds and faced with the threatening waves, and quite frankly, so do we all. So may we, next time we come up against incredible odds, may we remember this story. Remember that Jesus sees us straining at the oars, and he comes to be with us, our advocate and our companion, to encourage and inspire us to take heart, to know that he's with us, that he's even in the boat with us, and therefore we have nothing to fear. Metaphorically, figuratively speaking, on our congregational voyage of discovery, voyage of faith, we have been there a few times as well, haven't we? Those of you who are coming to help us celebrate, it hasn't all been easy sailing. You probably can believe that. Allow me a few minutes to remain, perhaps prompting you to remember some of your experiences on this journey. I'll try to be brief, but I know that much will be left unsaid, at least for this morning. But in the months and years to come, we'll tell the stories, won't we? I suppose it began with a congregational conversation about parking 9 years ago. We were trying to think outside the box, not something for which Presbyterians are famous. We were trying to find some way to make our faith home at 2 Cross Street more accessible. Not within the building, but to get to the building. As a result of that and many previous congregational discussions, unbeknownst to any of us, Bill and Dee Fuller began to wonder together if maybe Gale Presbyterian Church should consider a new location. One that would be accessible and visible. A facility that would enable the congregation to dream and imagine and reach out in new ways. I'm so excited this week because I have been twisting Bill's arm for years to let me tell this story. And finally, I don't know how I caught him in a moment of weakness, but finally he said, so here we go. Bill shared that this idea, this vision, first voiced by Dee, but readily adopted by Bill, became so important to both of them that they decided to pledge to assist the congregation with a significant financial gift. That is, if the congregation felt the aspiration was in fact an inspiration from God. To cut to the chase, clearly the congregation felt called to enter into and to own this vision. So too did Bill and Dee's family. As we know, about a year and a bit after the dream was born, Dee died. However, as a sign of their love for her and their acknowledgement of how much all of us and all of this meant to Dee, her family, her children, decided and determined to carry through on the pledge that was made by Bill and Dee. The Fuller children had shared generously from their mother's estate to honor her memory and her faith, and together with Bill's gifts, the land upon which this facility stands, visible, accessible, almost 3.5 acres, 3.456, something like that. This land, this sacred land, was provided for us because of their $1 million gift. So thank you.